Howdy fam, Anthony Johnson here today from 21 Studios in Tampa, Florida, here at a Turning Point USA SAS event. I'm here with Roman Balmakov from the Epic Times and Facts Matter. Not facts don't matter, facts do matter. They matter very much. Appreciate your time, man, coming on the show.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. You've actually found 21 Studios a little while ago, right? How'd that go?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that you guys had an event that you regularly put on. I was just, I'm a fan of Rich Cooper.
Okay.
Some of his content online. Usually when he puts out a podcast, I'm watching it, in the background. I really appreciate his content. So when I was, I don't know, the YouTube recommendations, because I watched so much of his videos, I guess they recommended one of his videos where he was giving a presentation at 21 Studios at one of the conferences.
Yep.
So I watched it. So that's how I found it previously, prior to meeting you, right, at the last event. So
was that your first introduction to the Manosphere and Red Pill kind of content?
You mean Richard Cooper?
Yeah, or 21 Studios, anything like that, yeah.
Well, I think the Richard Cooper's channel was the first introduction to it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, prior to that, I read a few books on, I guess, either that subject or it was tangential to, because I don't know about all these labels. I mean, labels are just whatever.
Yeah.
Just something about kind of bringing out the masculine energy and bringing out kind of the inner man. So I read a few excellent books that kind of began leading me down this path, and then eventually I came across Cooper.
So it's the ideas and the facts that matter to you, not the labels, right?
Yeah, because I mean, whatever, because you can even, I mean, okay, so like in this sphere that we're in politics, right? Yeah. A lot of people really like fight to the death over labels, right?
Yeah, conservative, libertarian, paleo-libertarian. Yeah. It's like an endless list of stuff, right?
Yeah, like what's his name? I think it's the Barry Weinstein, or whatever. He's a scientist, but he's constantly fighting about the liberal label. It's like, well, I'm still a liberal. Everyone else, that changed. People now call themselves liberals when they're more leftists. Now I have to like hang out with more conservatives. But it's like, okay, but what actually happened is that society shifted, and that label no longer means what it used to mean. One good example is like if you refer to a fag and you're still talking about a cigarette. Yeah. Well, if that's your hill to die on, like sure, yeah, you can still like use that label, right? But the society has sort of shifted. So likewise with any label, I kind of don't really care that much. I care about more like the personal development that I can take away from it, right? Like you can call it whatever you want, but how can I use it to better my own self? So that's the only thing I care about.
Yeah, you care about what works and the outcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talk to me about your work at the Epic Times. I've seen you on YouTube probably 1,000 times on my own channel. Yeah. Whenever the ads come up, like there you are, like did you know? Yeah. I love those commercials. I think you kill it, man. All right. But talk to me about your work there and what you do on your own channel now. It's blowing up big too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so with the ads, that's one of the ways that, because about 2.5 years ago, I wanted to figure out how to just reach the most amount of people with our content, because I've been working there for about the last nine years now.
And how old is the Epic Times?
21 years.
Wow.
But what I found was that I knew that if people just knew about this content, they would just subscribe like crazy. Because I force myself to read the other publications. I read the New York Times, I read the Wall Street Journal. We have subscriptions to them, and I really force myself because I really don't like them. I know basically within a given story, I know the facts of the story, right? And I know generally what happened, but then I see the way they present it. They might omit certain facts. They might misconstrue what someone said in order to fit a certain narrative, and it's like, and I read it, and I'm like, oh, it's so frustrating. Yeah. Like a great example of that was, so Joe Biden recently signed Juneteenth as a federal holiday, right? Yep. Now in America, Juneteenth is a federal holiday, and if your viewers don't know, Juneteenth was the day when slavery officially ended in America, basically, because even after the Civil War, there was still slavery in the western states, and then in Texas, which was the last holdout, Juneteenth, which is June 19th, is when slavery in Texas ended. And so Joe Biden signed this bill into law, officially making that a federal holiday. And within that story, within the New York Times, they were praising him, how he's like a leader for civil rights. But in that story, they said, well, actually, Donald Trump also was talking about making Juneteenth a federal holiday, because he was hoping to win the black vote, period. And to me, I'm like, well, why are you, did he say that? Are you assigning that motive to him? But why? Why don't you assign that same kind of level of scrutiny to Joe Biden? Because you might say, well, he's also trying to win the black vote. Yeah. So it's kind of those, and that's just one example.
Well, if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black.
he said it, not me. And also Joe Biden said it, not me. So
Exactly.
So, but anyway, but that's just like one of many, many, many examples. And it taken in its totality, it's like, oh, this is. But then I realized I get frustrated with it. I get frustrated reading the New York Times. But then I don't. When I flip a switch in my mind and I realize, like, wait a minute, if I view this as the Democrat Party newspaper, then it's actually a great newspaper. It has a lot of facts, has a lot of coverage, but it's not a mainstream kind of nonpartisan newspaper. If it's a Democratic Party newspaper, I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty good paper.
Well, that's really what news should be, right? I mean, back in the day, there was much less polarization to it and politicalization. It was just news was news, facts were facts, and that was the priority.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's changed in the past 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, for sure. And that's it's sort of with my channel, Facts Matter on YouTube, by the way. I hope you subscribe. Yeah.
Link in the description.
Excellent. So with that channel, I started it on November 18th, and your viewers probably remember that after the November 3rd election, there was a lot of this election fraud allegations that were coming out, and I saw that the media was spinning it constantly, like. Because again, I was following it closely, and I saw that when a story came out, they would just spin it right away. They would, for instance, use the official narrative, and they would heavily weigh the elected officials' narrative, for instance, versus some of the facts that were coming out and some of the affidavits that were coming out. They would just discount it wholesale and say, well, the official narrative is this, and then they would
There was 500 affidavits too, or something crazy, right?
Over 1,000, I think.
Wow.
Oh, I think it was 500 in just in Nevada.
Wow.
So there was a lot. And an affidavit, in case you don't know, is a sworn affidavit is a statement you make under penalty of perjury.
Yeah, it's serious.
And so if it's basically I'm saying that this is what I saw, this is what happened, and if you find out anything to the contrary, put me behind bars. You can find me, put me behind bars. So it's a serious statement. You can't just say, well, it's just a statement. No, it's a serious statement. They have thousands of these, right?
Yeah.
And so I started my channel in order to. It's almost like an experiment. For one, I wanted to push our content out as far as possible and have as many viewers, but also it was sort of an experiment. If I reported extremely factually without injecting any opinion, what would happen? Would YouTube take it down? And what wound up happening is that it blew up. Right away, I started getting 100,000 views even on the first video.
Wow.
200,000, 800,000, 1 million views. But then, and it was continuing to expand. But then when Joe Biden got sworn into office on January 20th, our channel got demonetized like that, without any reasoning.
For election policy and nothing?
No, nothing.
Wow.
No, nothing.
Have you had any strikes?
Never.
Wow,
Never.
Yeah.
Never. But on the back end, it just says your channel's been demonetized and it's under review. And I love it because it says usually these take about a month, and it was 5 months ago, and that's what it says, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so but on my channel, you'll see if you watch some of the content, I really try to stick to the facts. People compare it to my style, just the way I present it, compare it to Tucker Carlson, but it's not like Tucker Carlson because he's an opinion show, whereas I present the facts and I present both sides, I present statements, and I believe that's what the news should be, because then you give people both sides, you present the statements from one and the other, and then the viewer can make up their own mind based on their own judgments. And I believe that that's a really kind of respectful way, because I'm saying hey, you have your own mind. It's not my job to tell you what to think. You're a sentient being who has your own opinion. You have your own convictions. You have your own religious beliefs. You have your own life experience. You make up your own mind. I'm just doing the facts because you don't have the time to sit through a 2-hour-long Senate hearing.
Yeah.
And so I do, and I pull out the facts for you, and I say this is the new developments that happened, and then we reached out to the county and we got their statements on this, and compare them and make up your own mind.
So you don't believe human beings are sheep and should not be sheep?
Yeah, I don't.
I feel like the fake news treats us like sheep,
Yeah, it's. I feel like and that's been. There's a lot of overlap with that and the sort of communist mentality, because that's the same. I mean, whether you call it communism, statism, et cetera, the whole mentality is that you have an elite group that knows better than the group down below. And I mean, there is a conversation to be had there, because, for instance, there were studies done even back in what was it, the 50s or the 60s, that talked about how if you lead a story about suicide, if you have a really prominent suicide case in the nation, and you lead with that and you talk about it, suicides actually skyrocket in the country. Well, because people are maybe they see validation, they see that as a valid option, and they do it. So there is some conversation that should be had around the fact that the news media and what politicians say and what leaders say, it does influence people. But I feel like it's taking it to an extreme to then say, well, we need to start shaping society using this mechanism, right? So there is kind of a delicate balance between I don't know, to lack of a better word, keeping people safe versus just treating people as human beings with their own.
Well, being mindful of what you present, if it's a serious fact like suicide or a story like that, because you're right, it can inspire even mass shooters, right?
Yeah.
They said about mass shooters, don't show the face, because the minute you do, you inspire more of it.
Exactly.
Similar issue?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And so there is a delicate balance, but I lean more towards the side of like, listen, like it's still not my business to tell you what to think ultimately. So I just do my best. I try to treat allegations very kind of nuanced, because an allegation is just an allegation. Like if someone accuses you of, I don't know, like whatever, rape or
Me Too crap or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be truth to it or there might not, but an allegation unless it's really of national prominence, I almost don't report on them, because it's up to the court to decide what's true or not. It's not me. And the media can destroy a person.
And in the meantime, I'm innocent until proven guilty, at least legally, and I should be.
Exactly. But if the media reports too heavily on it, even if you're proven innocent later, what happens with all those stories that have been published?
They ruin your life.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a delicate balance, but anyway, so that's sort of the how what we do on the back end. Yeah.
Now I saw on the banner for the Epic Times it says truth and tradition.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about what that means? Does that have anything to do with like the war on men in America, the war on family values, the war on masculinity, things like that?
I feel so. I mean, tradition encompasses a lot of things, but I feel like those definitely the war in the family. I feel like it's just right now communism, right? And it's very like people think of communism, they think of like, oh yeah, the USSR, like maybe China, like they think of like literally black and white like footage type of things, like communism is so far removed. But it's like communism has metastasized into like sort of something totally different, but the goal is still the same, to bring about a totalitarian. No, they don't think it's a totalitarian state. They think it's like a social paradise on earth.
The utopia.
Yeah, the utopia. Yeah. But the way they do it is that they create a Hegelian dialectic, right? Okay. They split people up. They create two extreme positions and they eliminate the middle. And so then you have to choose one or the other, and they eliminate any kind of nuance. And so you see that playing out with the war against masculinity, the war against femininity, the war against men. I mean, it's just destroying any kind of like solid cultural norms that we have as a country. Like for instance, my family's Russian, and when I watch Russian news, which like
by the way, people on my channel have accused you of being a Russian spy and shit. Really? I'm like, what the fuck? No. I like this guy. I think he's pretty cool.
There you go. So
future's masculine.
Yes, sir.
Love it.
So when I'm visiting my family, and they sometimes have Russian TV playing, like granted, Russian TV is pretty much propaganda. Like it's unabashedly propaganda. So
RT and stuff.
RT is like sort of the American-facing side. Okay. Over there, it's like Channel 1, Channel 2, whatever. Like the way the Russian media works, it's propaganda. But one thing that you'll notice is that there's sort of like an undercurrent when they're doing like on the street interviews or doing interviews of when people come in or they do like talk shows about people sitting down. Well, not talk shows, but like shows about. There's this one where it's like they kind of like have a man and then they kind of bring in girls and then there's like a panel when they kind of see whether they're compatible. It's like a little fun show, but within the kind of the subtext is that people have an agreed upon understanding of what life is, an agreed upon understanding of like the natural life process. Like you're born into a family, you go through school, you go to college, you get married, you have a family, you kind of play out this normal life cycle. But I feel like in America, the people who are kind of playing this Hegelian dialectic Marxist game, they've broken apart to such a degree that there's like really no agreed upon American life path. And so you feel it. You feel
we don't even agree on what a man and woman is anymore.
That's exactly.
Now we have like chicks with dicks and shit.
Yeah, those are like the really extreme manifestations of it. But but it's everywhere. Where it's like when you meet someone, you have no idea like where are you from, what pronoun are you, like what are your thoughts in your head, like there's no like blanket understanding like, oh okay, so like where are you from, what school did you go to, and it's like and a lot of stuff is just filled in, like you have you're a normal person with a normal life.
So you think the culture has been super fractured basically?
Yeah, and I feel like that has largely been pushed forward by people who have ulterior motives potentially. Well, I feel like it's kind of one of two things. One is like Marxism is really, really pernicious in the sense that like it feeds into this mindset of people who really want to do good and don't want to kind of rock the boat and don't want to be seen as mean. And generally, I feel like Americans are nice and they don't want to be seen as mean. Yeah. And they spin it and they kind of utilize this factor where it's like, well, you want to be nice to these people. Look, you're hurting their feelings, right? You don't want to call them names. You got to
be inclusive, man.
You don't want to misgender them and etc. And I feel like okay, sure, you don't want to hurt their feelings, but I feel like that's been taken to like such an extreme that it's it's like fracturing society to a certain sense. And
Do you view this as very, on a scale of 1 to 10, how dangerous do you think this is for the future of the United States?
very dangerous. I mean,
9, 10?
Yeah, probably like 9. Yeah, probably. Because, well, 10. I mean, because if you take it to its logical conclusion, like where does it ultimately go to, right? And unfortunately, I mean, if there was this trending hashtag not too long ago. Yuri was right? Yuri Bezmenov, right?
Yeah,
so if you watch Yuri Bezmenov, which I highly recommend, he's this Soviet defector who actually defected to Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, and he had 2 presentations. He had that have been documented. He also published a book under a pseudonym, but he gave this presentation where he explained how the Soviet Union was planning to subvert America, right? And he talked about how it takes a full generation to kind of undermine an entire country, and gosh, I lost my train of thought. I forgot.
Bezmenov?
Yeah, no, but
Fracturing of the country?
Yeah. But anyway, I would highly recommend you watching that because he kind of laid out this whole thing is something that the Soviets were planning for quite a long time in advance. Sorry, I forgot where I was going somewhere with that. Maybe I'll remember it later. But I would highly recommend it if you really want to kind of understand where a lot of this stuff ultimately came from and where this Hegelian dialectic came from. Oh no, we were talking about where this leads to, right? So what likely happened, what has happened throughout history is that once people come into power, once like communists come into power, a lot of the people who kind of like champion a lot of these individual causes that have essentially led to them coming into power, the socialists coming into power, they're actually persecuted themselves. They turn around and they're like, hey, we don't need these radical revolutionary.
The purists. This happened in Russia too, right?
It happened in Russia, China, Cuba, Ethiopia with the Derg regime.
Stalin killed all the purists, right? The 100% communists. Yeah.
Well, in Eastern Europe, there's a ton of examples of this where you have a lot of the agitators who are initially agitating. They're trying to, within the realm of the church or within the realm of education, they were agitating, they were pushing for more Marxism, they were pushing to kind of break apart the structure as it is. Once the people, the socialists come into power, once the communists come into power, they have historically actually then turned around and they don't want more agitators. Yeah, exactly. They don't want those agitators have kind of served their purpose, and then they get persecuted themselves.
That's why we call them useful idiots, right?
Exactly. Well, that's what Lenin called them, and so I mean they're pretty naked about it.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually The Naked Communist is the name of Yuri Bezmenov's book, ironically.
Okay.
And I feel like they are. No, maybe I'm mistaken. That was another book. But regardless, I mean, if you read the writings of them, they're pretty unabashed about it. However, going back to the media narrative of it, like Wikipedia, if you look up cultural Marxism, which is basically Marxism through the use of the culture, right? Instead of any wars or the Cold War, it's communism and Marxism being pushed through the institutions. Wikipedia labels that as a conspiracy theory.
Wow.
And then the best part is they quote a bunch of like professors saying like, oh yeah, it's been disproven by a bunch of professors saying it's a conspiracy theory. But ironically, like the theory is that the professors are doing it. So it's like you're interviewing the professors who would never admit to it, or maybe they themselves aren't familiar with what's going on. But regardless, I mean, what I would recommend anybody to do is just to be extremely open-minded. That's what I try to be, and just explore the facts. Like don't be worried so much about the labels. Like, oh, this is called cultural Marxism. This is called feminism. This is called whatever.
I did want to ask you actually. Do you see a connection? Some people say feminism is like communism in a pink skirt. Yeah. Do you see feminism as an element or a major form of cultural Marxism?
Well, okay. Here, to be honest, and we talked about this before the interview. Like,
yeah.
I have my areas of expertise. Not a big expert on feminism.
Okay.
From what I've read, it seems like first wave feminism had some legit concerns, like the right to vote. Some other rights. I'm not exactly sure, but there were some legitimate concerns that women were pushing for in the first wave of feminism. But from my understanding, the second and third wave of feminism, which is sort of, I think right now it's like the third or fourth wave.
Yeah, and I'd say it's like fourth wave these days.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point where,
well, it's hyper radical. It's believe all women, which is like delusional, Me Too, toxic masculinity. The future is female. It's like, I'm not female. Where's my future?
Yeah.
Like, hello.
Yeah. Well, even like the Me Too movement, right? Like, this is what the communists do. They take a kernel of truth, which is that, sure, yes, there's legitimate problems with women getting, raped or getting put into positions like that. However, it gets like ramped up to like this whole giant movement where, I mean, and actually, ironically, I've read at least that it has kind of turned around and now it hurts women because like men in power are now more reluctant to, for instance, like promote women or take them on business trips along.
Even hire them.
Yeah, or even hire them because they might get accused of these Me Too allegations. So again, it's like, is this dialectic where there is legitimate concerns with women, getting raped and having sexual assault done against them. Then there's the men who have been accused falsely and they want nothing to do with it. And so what this Hegelian dialectic does, what these people trained essentially in Marxism do, is they separate them and cut out the middle. And so you can't say like, well, this is a nuance. Let's judge it case by case. It's like, wait a minute, judge it case by case. That's a far right. Type of thing to look at.
I've seen people accuse you of being a far right news source at the Epic Times. I'm like, no, I think they're just focused on facts.
Exactly. I mean, that's perfect because what we do is we during the Trump, that was never the case until Trump came into office, and then we reported on him accurately. We didn't spin the facts when we discussed the administration, and so again, it was a Hegelian dialectic. You're either with Trump or against Trump, and there's no more nuance.
Yep.
So I mean, that is the Hegelian dialectic is the method that Marxism uses to just break down society. Wow. They create two polar extremes, and then they destroy the middle, and so you have to pick one or the other. That you have to go into one or two camps, and then those two camps clash with one another, and society breaks down as a result. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
Last question. So you mentioned you got divorced before the interview. Yeah. How'd that go down, and how did that influence your life today?
Yeah, so the divorce. I won't go into the details because I do respect my ex-wife enough not to talk about it.
Sure.
But the point I will mention about the divorce was that in that process we got married young, relatively young. I think we met when we were 22, married at 23, and in that process. A lot of my personal, I only talk about it for myself because whatever, I think life is a bit more about personal development than calling out anybody else, because you can help other people develop themselves all you want, but at the end of the day, if you're just a loser, sitting at home, it's like, okay, whatever. So I'll only talk about it from my perspective. So throughout the course of the marriage and also through the divorce, I realized a lot of my own shortcomings, especially as a man. And she called them out. She's like, listen, you have a vaporous presence to you, meaning like, I'm not solid, Okay. She said that I'm not grounded. She didn't feel safe and secure with me. And, again, I'm not going to talk about anything about her. I really took that to heart. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Everything you said there is spot on, and I need to work on that. And so what I did is I took that to heart, and I started meeting with men who I looked around in my circle, my extended circle, and I said, okay, which are the men that I really respect, who I think are grounded, who I think are solid. And I just invited them out to coffee. I'm like, hey, listen, like, tell me about your life. Tell me about marriage. What is it like? How are you grounded? And I talked to them. I developed deeper connections with these men. I started exercising, working out. I joined jiu-jitsu actually. Right, Richard Cooper always talks about joining jiu-jitsu.
A lot of masters into that.
Yeah. And I just started developing myself, and I think that's the key. To just develop your own self. And so I feel like, the fact that the marriage broke down, it sucks. Luckily, we didn't have any kids, so that was good. I mean, ultimately...
How many years ago was this? 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago?
The divorce, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, same.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
So, so I memean, I just took it as like a great opportunity to do a lot of self-reflection and just move forward and just like build myself up from the ashes, just take, because I meditate a lot. Like I meditate a lot. And so what I found was like, I was able to kind of like review myself in this process and view the notions that I held about women, about like, oh, she's the perfect one, or like, she's like a unicorn or whatever, all this stuff. And I saw that like, you know what, that's not necessarily the case. And so a lot of these notions, they kind of like whittled away and burned away, sort of like a phoenix, like a lot of that stuff was just reduced to ash, and there was like, I don't know, maybe like 10% of me that remained, but that 10% was like pretty solid. And I was able to kind of grow and build on that. Now it's a process. I mean, I'm still young, I'm still growing, building.
Oh, you're kicking ass, man. We're Epic Times, lead reporter, you got your own channel, it's huge, 500,000 followers, right? You're killing it, man.
Almost 600,000.
There we go.
And maybe some of you can subscribe and push it over 600,000.
Do it, guys, do it.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Roman, big time. I appreciate everything you do, man, 100%. I'll see you on YouTube and maybe see you later this year.
Great. Yeah, cool. See you later.
See you guys.